Welcome everyone to our Kinky Talk number 50. It's a small celebration if you wish. My name is Adalberto, and if you're joining for the first time, an even warmer welcome. I started these talks almost exactly 5 years ago, and I'll have just a short introduction before we introduce. Well, actually, let's start maybe introduces first our panel. And I'll start in the order on my screen and then give a short introduction about how the topic of today came about, and then get more in the topic. So I'll start with Roger, who's at the top of my screen.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Roger. I'm one of the founders of the Mr. Rubber Netherlands Foundation and one of the founders of the Dutch Rubberman Club. We've organized community events since 2010 with the aim to create fun spaces and events for guys interested in latex.
Yeah, thanks a lot. By the way, I forgot to mention, so usually for the Kinky Talks, we record the first part where we chat with the panelists so that we can publish it on the website. So if for privacy reasons you prefer not to risk to be on screen, of course you're welcome to switch off the microphone or the camera. And then when we stop recording, then we can open, so there's no issue with privacy. Sometimes we have friends from the Middle East or countries where it's not too good to be on screen. Next on my screen, Andre, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm Andre. I am the former organizer of the Mr. Leather Netherlands elections. I am organizer of the Pride at the Beach event every year. I am this year ambassador for Pride Amsterdam. And a lot of you know me from the Mr. B shop in Amsterdam.
Great to have you with us, Andre. Next on my screen is John, all the way from the UK.
All the way from the UK. Hello, everyone. I'm John. Former Leather UK years and years ago. I think I was in my 20s, so maybe 5 years ago. I recently got this in Antwerp, which was rather nice. A block of plastic with Mr. Potty on it, which is kind of, you might remember me from such moments as "Be as gay as you fucking want," which was my campaign for Darklands this year. Part of the team that set up the Heart of England in England. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, lovely. And oh, it's okay. Well, that's a surprise. And also Leather 101 online for people who are new to gear, getting their confidence and getting them out there and doing their thing. So that's me.
Thanks a lot. And next, for even further away, Joe, all the way from Chicago. Thank you for being with us today.
Of course, yeah. I'm Joe. I'm a former MIR 25. I'm also the president of the Chicago Rubber Club and also a producer of Chicago Fetish Weekend, which launched 2 gender-inclusive titles last year, Midwest Rubber and Chicago Leather Ambassador.
Thanks a lot. And Alex.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm organizer of the Barcelona Rubber Weekend and the Rubber Spain contest. And yep, I'm here.
Thank you for bringing the Spanish vibes to tonight. And last but not least, Mirko from Italy.
Hello, I'm Mirko, or Dark Hermes. I was Mr. Rubber of Italy last year, but still I'm active in the community. And yeah, I also work in Italy for an association for LGBT rights, for inclusion, for prevention, and so on. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks a lot. So Hans and I met actually almost 5 years ago, and we joined forces. I had this idea to I was feeling a need to share or to learn more on many different topics, things that usually, we go to parties, we might be at social events, talk to people, but are like a next level and having moments to share. And he basically just said, I'm going to help you. And fast forward, and we had, today is the 50th event. Of course, at the time, pandemic hit, so well, the choice for online was made for us. And here's just a short selection, a small selection of some of the topics we talk about. Of course, some also in a way connected to what we are talking tonight, and more on the aspect top left. I'm not sure if you see my mouse.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The event from last year with Gael and Pushcat, talking about diversity and inclusion on ethnicity background, but also on other aspects. And all of these are recorded and available freely on the website. So I really encourage you to have a look for and watch the ones that might be of most interest. And currently we host these events every 2 months. So the next will be June the 12th. We don't have yet a topic selected. So who knows, maybe today, if you have ideas or you yourself have knowledge or experience that you would like to share, of course.
Okay, is goed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Theo is mute. But also talking about also diversity in terms of age. We also had, for instance, an event on youngsters, but we also talk about BDSM. Mirko, who joined us to share research from his PhD work, and the Valentine edition from February. And of course, since you're here, you know where to find us. And yeah, as I mentioned, so today is the 50th event. So this kind of a little bit of a special, and I think I made a quick calculation, Hans, the back of the envelope about how much time we have invested, and I think with an average of probably at least 10 hours per event.
Yeah.
Something that I did not expect at the beginning, and I'm really, really happy that we are here and with a lot of you with us. So I want to share a little bit. There have been also a few questions. Okay, well, how does the talk of today come about? Where is it coming from? And what is the angle for tonight? So actually, it came sort of out of the blue in the last talk during our Valentine's Day, where at some point we were in a conversation about gender affinity versus gender inclusion in kinky spaces, and then we just thought, oh, well, since it was an interesting topic for many, we thought, well, let's just dedicate a time and a whole talk to that. And a background, of course, the things that we have seen, especially I realize in the rubber and puppy scene, but might be also in other scenes, is that we have seen that some originally gay men fetish clubs, there will be a few examples next, originally set up as gay men spaces around the fetish, recently actually opened up and embraced a much wider diversity of individuals, also women in some cases, or straight along the sexual orientation angle. And there are also title competitions, some, especially in the last 5 years, next to a Mr. Title, added a Miss and or an MX title, and others moved to a single title for all genders, where all competing the same, like for instance MIR, starting this year, the next event. But of course, if you look at the big numbers, most groups and titles have not made this change, or not yet. MIR has done it, but IML not yet, who knows? And when talking about these things, then what we really, at least I personally found really interesting, is to see, okay, how do these things come about? I mean, they clearly don't fall from the sky. There must be factors, things happening that eventually, bring together these developments. And in parallel, maybe a more higher level or basic question, like how do we as affinity groups define actually our identity, and how do we go about redefining it? Because that's quite something, actually. So the aim of today is to hear experiences of some of the people that have been involved in some of the changes, or have thought about these, have been involved in thinking on these aspects. So also, what you can or cannot expect, especially if you're here for the first time. Again, our aim is sharing ideas, experiences. Topic of inclusion is huge. We dream to have like a 2-day conference Mirko, for sure, you will be one of the chairman of one of the sessions, to be able to talk just 2 days about all kinds of stuff about our community. And so I just launched there the idea. So think about it. So we will not be comprehensive. We are taking a very narrow, very specific angle tonight, but we think that it's valuable because we never really talk about these things and things happen. So even a smaller scope conversation, we think, is better than no conversation at all. Also, one aspect, and don't expect that the 6 panelists invited represent the full community. We've invited them because we know them, we know they have story experience to share, and basically that's it. One core aspect for us is to be respectful. I think that goes without saying. And if you think during the event tonight there's anything that me or Hans should know, things strange going on, of course, feel free to send us a direct message, and we'll do the best we can. Let's see if it goes to the next. Yes. So 2 things about Kinky Talks again. What is our motto? Is we try to keep things fun. If you looked at our portfolio, sometimes we talk about things that are quite serious. We talk about suicide in the scene. We talk about edge play, things that sometimes also are on the edge, but we try to do it in a way because we think it's important, try to keep it fun, humor, heart, definitely a lot of heart in many of these conversations. How being self-aware, relation-aware, risk-aware, where it's needed. And for sure, one thing that we recognize in the last 50 talks or 49 talks is that we're not about the one true way, because maybe if you still believe there is one true way for things, I have to disappoint you. We try to present decent info, people with decent experience, so that you yourself, can do something with it, hopefully. And we like discussions because the bubble knows more, as long as also sometimes we're allowed to differ and again, respect. And we also like this style that if you look at our community, of course, there's a lot of things that can be done better, can be improved, but really takes a community outside of the usual to leave ourselves and parts of ourselves that are outside of the usual. And we hope to have a little contribution there. So I want to just give one example that for me brought up all these thoughts a few years ago, and just define a few words that might be used today, and before we move to the panel. So unfortunately, we could not have people from the Melbourne club, because I think it's 4 a.m. and they're nicely sleeping in Melbourne, but they were happy for me to share their example. Of course, I'm biased for the rubber world, and the rubber club is in Melbourne is the first one that made this big move in embracing a wider spectrum on the gender and sexual orientation. And their history is relatively recent. They were founded in 2016. If you don't know them, look them up. Beautiful website as well with history. Founded as Melbourne Rubber Men and a Melbourne Rubberman title. And only 3 years later, they actually changed and were the first rubber club, at least that I'm aware of, that changed to Melbourne Rubber. And 2 years ago, they introduced, next to the still having a Melbourne Rubberman title, they introduced a Miss Melbourne Rubber to create representation in that way. But eventually, from this year, they decided to move actually from the 2 titles to merge them into one inclusive title from the end of this year. And yeah, what I'm told, unfortunately, I've not witnessed the Melbourne community yet, but that actually already from the beginning was a very diverse community. So maybe was a bit sort of how do you say organic example, and I think, yeah, being the first, of course, they deserved a mention. Often I used to talk a lot in exclusivity and inclusivity, and I like the word affinity that a friend of mine uses. So I wanted to look it up and share it here, so that actually all groups are affinity groups, because they are a group of people having a common interest, a common affinity, And often, of course, if we talk about kinky and the traditionally kinky gay men, it would be about the one fetish, rubber, leather, motorcycles, uniforms, you name it, and probably a component of men and gay going together. But you can think, of course, affinity group like the volleyball club. But maybe that identity is a little bit less strong, of course, because we as minorities, a shared identity, of course, is something we often look for and need. And affinity groups can also offer a safe space where we can explore this identity. We all have experience, I think, with the newbies, the new people that approach groups and the scene, and need this safe space to explore themselves. And on the other end, inclusion being defined as the act or practice to include, accommodate people who have historically been excluded for one or the other factor. And it's about making sure that being part of a minority doesn't rob you of equal opportunities in a way. And inclusion can be seen by some people as maybe a threat to an established identity. If you really cling to an identity, then changing it, can be a bit of a friction between the two. But inclusion can also be an opportunity to expand horizons and learn something new. So probably some factors there. And I wanted to conclude with also in a conversation with some friends where a simplistic model, but one could see, we all, I think everybody who's here today or is watching the recording would want everybody to have a roof above their head. And it can be, smaller houses next to each other, sometimes having maybe a party per house or a party together, or a bigger house where we're all in one. And I'm curious, of course, to hear thoughts and around these lines from our participants. So this was just to throw in a few, last, for those who might think, but I still find some of the definition or some things in this space a bit confusing. What I personally really like and want to pitch is the gender-bread person, which besides the fantastic name is also really well done. So you can go read it up later if you want to check some definitions in this space of gender expression, sexual attraction. So without, there was a little bit of introduction of the topic, and let's see if technology now works. And yes, I'm back. So I would like to start to have a round with our panelists to actually ask them what say affinity mean for you from a personal point of view and from the point of view of the group, if you are leader of a group or the community you feel part of, what that means for you. I'll start in order on my screen. Roger, would you like to start to share what affinity has meant to you for the group?
Sure. Our group originated around 2010, and from a group of people who were exclusively cisgender homosexual men interested in rubber fetish. And back then, you can't imagine that right now, but back then there weren't many mystery elections, especially in Europe, and or active ones. And we thought it was a good idea to try and see if we could form a community and create spaces where you could be amongst other gay men interested in the same kinks or fetishes, and where we could provide a place and a time for people to join together. And it originated as such, and so the affinity would be the common interest would be homosexual kinky men.
All right, thank you, Roger. Andre, from your experience?
Then you have to, if it's about what I did for the Mr. Leather elections, when I started it, the affinity was pure gay men with a leather fetish. And what I experience in that is that in the years I did it, that there was already a change going in, and then especially that was more like in the audience that was coming to the event. There were then already questions if women were allowed, and so it already started then. And for me, it was important to at that point to already let them in, and because I'm curious how it's curious to see how it works. So that is for me the already the start that things were changing. And I think that's what my experience is for now. And it's in my job as well. There is a lot of things changing.
Yeah, definitely one constant in life is for sure change. Things luckily don't stay the same all the time. And we'll come back to that in the next round for sure. John, would you like to share your view or your experience with Affinity, what it meant for you?
Well, I think on a personal level, one of the things I find most enriching and encouraging about our community is the people that we meet. Now, we can all say that, can't we? We can all say, oh, we meet people, they're wonderful. It doesn't matter if they're cis men, cis women, trans, whatever. But truly, I've met some people, and I'm going to use Karin Blij. I'm going to use Rain Blij as a good example because I know she's presented on Kinky Talks before. When you meet individuals like Karin, or Rain, sorry, who's such a wonderful human being, so full of energy, so full of positivity. How on earth, as an individual, can you, so this is just me, how can I not be friendly and welcoming to somebody that is just as friendly and welcoming? Now, not everyone's like Karin, I know that. And I think when we set up the group in Birmingham, it was a definite in my head. We were always going to be gender inclusive. And it was a real kind of like, whether you fucking like it or not, we're going to be. It's a social environment where people who like gear, people who like leather come together and make friends and have fun. That's all it's about. We try and avoid judging, but I can't speak for everyone. So it's really the enrichment that those odd women, I'm not saying that they're odd, but just the occasional women that come along, whether they be people like Lynn or Levi, and so we've had a few of the regulars, they actually add a big dynamic to it. And when you consider so many leather men, certainly in my demographic, so many of them used to be married with kids and things like that. And then later in life have kind of recalibrated their sexuality. How on earth could you exclude anyone from that party? And that's how I feel about it. And I think it all comes down to communications, because if you're going to do an event that's a little bit more hard on, no pun intended, women, trans or cis women understand perfectly that a play event is a whole different dynamic. That doesn't mean you exclude them, but they understand. If you talk to people, they will understand. And I think that's what it all comes down to. And I'm very proud to have pricked a lot of people's consciences over the last couple of years on what it's like to be in the same space, in a back bar, in a pub, in Birmingham, with trans people in there and women as well. And it's really, because I've talked to them after the events and said, oh, or I've talked to them during, oh, have you met so-and-so Pascal, or whoever it might be that might be at that event, who was a trans Pup UK a couple of years back. They were like, yeah, all the people I thought might have gone, oh God, this is terrifying, I'm never coming back, actually were like, God, yeah, isn't she lovely? Isn't it lovely? Exactly. That's what it's all about. And I think, yeah, that's it. I've blithered on enough. That's my attitude towards it.
Yeah, thank you. And also for mentioning the aspect of communication. I think that's something we might come back later, because often it can solve so much.
Well, I must say, Alberto, just to add to that, I actually, when we did her invite, and I'd invited them personally.
Can you hold it for later, John? Can you hold it?
Yeah, sure, I'll shut up. You know what I'm like once I get started.
Yeah. And I have the mute button, huh? I have the mute button. Joe.
Yeah, so
What does affinity mean to you?
yeah, I think as humans we all have a desire to belong and to find people that we have shared interests with. I think what becomes challenging or problematic is when we then turn around and say who like we found a group and now we are policing that group. So for me, Infinity is about finding people who share a common interest, rubber, maybe queer rubber spaces. And I think that's really how the conversation with the Chicago Rubber Club started. We were founded in 2003 as the Chicago Rubber Men, really a social group focused for gay men. And when I started getting involved in the Chicago Rubber Club around 2018, we had members. I guess we didn't really have a formal membership, but we had people attending who were women and trans who said, yeah, we love your events, but we never feel like we're welcome. And this was around the same time I was exploring my own non-binary identity. And so we kind of came back as a board and said, these people are absolutely part of our club. If our name makes them feel unwelcome, then we are doing a disservice to our community. And so for us, it was listening, it was hearing what the community wants. And that's what led us to kind of rebrand the Chicago Rubber Club as a queer first space. Obviously, straight people are welcome, but we want to protect, especially with what's happening in the world, queer spaces, but queer spaces for everyone.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And we'll definitely go a bit deeper on that. Alex,
Yeah.
what does affinity
Okay.
mean to you? And
So, like, for us, so the thing is, like, there was not a moment when we started like thinking about this topic. So we just came from nothing. There was any space in Spain or Barcelona for rubber gay men, and when we just like passed, so I was involved on the first, not on the first Mr. Rubber Spain election, but on the second, and I fully take the charge on the third. So when we started to, let's say, develop the event, what we wanted is like it was not sorry. One of the first organizer was a straight man, so he was very interested on like having an inclusivity with straight people and women on the event. But for us, what it was more important is to have like a space for rubber men, because there was not a space. It was something that no one knew about it. And so for us at the beginning, it was more to, let's say, include everyone that was interested in rubber rather than the gender or the identity or stuff like that. And yeah, after we grow up, we start like, just what John said, like the social events or the play events, and starting to put some lines and try to define ourselves, let's say, a little bit better. But we also came to that change of rubber man to rubber. So yeah, we still don't know what we are. So
well, for sure, all these processes are also in development, also in a way. Even though there can be moments where there is a change or there is a change of name, I think it's also fluid to some extent. Mirko, Dark Hermes, curious to hear your experience on the affinity and maybe something from your academic research.
Yes, this is a topic that I faced when I was in the field. So I wanted to notice what happens when there are other genders in a space that hypothetically you suppose is more about a man who has sex with men, which is a epidemiological category that we used for HIV in the past, but also this category now is obsolete. It's old. It's not used at all to describe the phenomenon of sex, of kinky sex, and so on. I really like the word affinity because I think it's very important to focus on what we do together, which are our values, and what we want to share together, not what we have between our legs. Okay, and I think that when there's no spaces in an area where you are not obliged to show, to justify, or to exhibit your gender identity, is not a safe place, because I think it's very important to give to people the opportunity to do things together. Because if you create only events for one gender, I think we are in a paradox. For example, I've noticed one time in a club that it was allowed for straight people to come to the club, but not for a trans woman, for example, for a kinky trans woman. So it's like a paradox, because the gender is more important than what the person do. I think it could be very dangerous in situations where, for example, you are in an election of a representative of the community, of an ambassador of leather, of rubber, and so on, and the whole kinky community can't participate to the election. Okay, closer to the microphone, sorry. Where, for example, other people can't participate to the election, and it's quite offensive if, for example, the bar woman or the women that works in that club can attend to the event just because they work. I think sometimes we fall in some mistakes, and we have to be careful and to think about our community and try to understand if someone is missing, if someone is excluded. That's valid not only for genders inclusion, but also for other topics like race, like neurodiversities, and so on. But let's concentrate to the main topic. Yeah, I think that it's important to remember the tradition, the culture, the historical reasons that took us to the present. So, of spaces basically where there are more men than other genders, and that's important to, I think, preserve some safe spaces for this subculture. But at the same time, I think we have to take care about the new things, especially if we travel, especially if we learn other situations from abroad or from other culture, because they could be very important to be a better community.
Yeah, thank you, Mirko. For sure, there are nowadays, with the digital ways we have to connect, or the Instagram, Facebook, I think that's a good thing that we can learn and hear. And well, that's also one of our aims, of course, of tonight, to share experiences. Maybe if I can go back to Joe for our next round. I like to go back to what you mentioned on that you had already some people. So at the time of Chicago Rubbermen, there were actually some people not identified as gay men taking part. And could you say a bit more about that dynamic, and then maybe a second part? Well, the second part maybe I'll ask later.
Yeah, I guess like it's also, I think, important to understand first, like the US doesn't, especially nowadays, doesn't really have sex clubs. They're not legal. There are bars with back rooms that operate. I think, especially in Chicago, those spaces historically have been only men, but that's not the case anymore. So these kind of kink spaces are more, at least in Chicago, more and more open to people of all genders. So most of our events were bar socials. Some of the the venues there. And so, and these people were our friends, the people that, maybe even were on staff of MIR. And so they would just come to the events, and then hearing that they didn't feel like the club was for them, even though they were attending events, kind of really, that's what made me think like this is not okay. Like these are people we love, we care about. I think John kind of mentioned that as well. So we should absolutely be changing. I don't know if that answered your question, Alberto.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a way, and also good interesting point, how the type of venues we have also have an interplay on things. If I understand correctly, it was more of a social setting anyway, so it's easier maybe for people outside of what we might call the target group, the core group.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely dark rooms that happen. They're just, I think it's different, right? In a lot of Europe, you have licensed men's only sex clubs, right? And so I do think that is a difference. I don't know how we as a community navigate that. But in the US, that is one less obstacle, is that our venues our bars are usually not anymore men's only.
Yeah. So that's very interesting indeed. And then to the second aspect or second question I had in mind, when you mentioned then you made this development, which then say, okay, makes sense. You have anyway these people gravitating around the group, so let's just make them really feel part of the group. How you mentioned earlier the line where you said then align, straight, welcome, I think you mentioned, or how do you then set the line, or how did
Yeah, that was a big conversation. And actually, one person ended up leaving the club because they said, oh, like I only joined because I'm interested in gay men. And now we're going to have like straight people taking over our club. And so like that was part of the conversation is, so what is the affinity now? Is it just rubber? Is it queer? And so we kind of focused on, since most of our events were in queer venues, is that and obviously being kind of a disenfranchised community, that I think it's important to protect queer spaces. Of course, anyone is welcome at our events, gear or no gear. We try to, we advertise on our website, we're a queer-focused organization that anyone is welcome to attend. And, as a result, I think we have had changes. Most of our board is now is all non-binary. We have had more women coming to our events. But we're not seeing what that one person was afraid of, is that this group would no longer be for queer people. In fact, we've actually had somebody say, oh, I'm bisexual and now I can bring both my partners. So I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's interesting to then follow up with Alex, since in Spain you had at least a change in the title, and I was honored and lucky enough to be one of the judges at the first Open Ambassador Spain Ambassador Rubber Spain election. Can you say something about how the decision came about?
Well, we had in the past, so in 2016 and 2017, a Miss Rubber Spain. So as I said at the beginning, the title was organized by one person which was straight and two others that were gay men. And so, but then it was, let's say, difficult to keep up with this Miss election because some other reasons our team was not able to organize it, and then there were some issues, so it was not easy, so we stopped doing it. And there was always this recurring thing that we have to came back with it. There should be like a miss or what we are gonna do, and then we change our group name to Barcelona Rubber Men to Barcelona Rubber, and also the title came from Mr. Rubber Spain to Rubber Spain. And there was like 1 year which it was kind of a blurry, and then we said, okay, we have to set up and like to put the base that it can stay without changing the name like forever, because we were changing our name all the time. And Yeah, and then there was like some people interested to participate, but it was people, so like queer people, but they were not able to participate because it was just like for men. So it was not said that they need to be gay, but of course we wanted them to be gay because it was part of our community, and we wanted them to go to other kinky events that were based for a gay audience. So yeah, we just came up with this ambassador name that it was inspired by some other ambassadors. Well, basically on Disneyland Paris, they have so the Disney parks, they have like ambassadors every year, and it's a title which is non. It has no gender, so for us it was kind of like good to swap to this name, and then our idea for having that issue that Joe said, that there was someone concerned about having an event full of women and then the gay people did not want it to attend or stuff like that. We just keep it on the rules that it was just open for members of the LGBTQ and more community. So it's open to everyone that want to be part of that community, and it keep it like that. Since we have it like this, we didn't have any women or anyone, let's say, different than gay cis men, or at least that we know, because we don't ask, but yeah.
I see a raised hand by John.
Oh, there's a surprise. Do you know what? I remember this as well, Alex, back in the day when we were setting up the club in Birmingham. Well, I was setting up the club in Birmingham. Because we always made it gender inclusive, because I think we're at that juncture in the whole LGBTQ plus and kink community where things are changing very, very rapidly. And to my mind, I could see forward that in time, this is something we would need to. So rather than being an older club that has to deal, whether it's London or Manchester or whatever, having to deal with reappraising their kind of inclusion for cis women and trans women, that we could actually do something about it, and we could just start off that way. And a few people were a little bit fearful, but as you discovered yourself, it's kind of people think that literally busloads of trans and cis women are going to turn up to our event and completely take them over like it's that. Well, do you know what? So what if they did? Because I'll tell you something, it's only a matter of time before, I tell you what, they'll want to do their own thing as well. And I would personally, I always felt that I would rather be in there at the beginning and include everyone. And if people fragment off in other directions, that we can help and support them like they've helped and supported us. But as you discovered yourself, you don't suddenly get this huge influx of non-gay people coming to the event. You get the occasional few, and I think we should, as I think Roger said or Hermes said already, you know, we should make sure that that welcome is just as positive and just as warm to whoever comes through the door. You know, and for us that has worked perfectly well, and I would disperse any concerns that any clubs have got around the UK or further afield, that it will become a problem, because I genuinely don't believe it will. You know, but anyway, that's my 2 pennies worth on that, guys and girls and in betweens.
And then I'll let Alex reply. It was 1 millisecond faster than John.
No, just like, I mean, for us, it has to say that we had, like, let's say, less problems or less issues with gender issues than fetish issues. Like, so we had like a fight with leather men all the time. Like, oh, this is just for rubber men. Oh, why? Where is our space? Where is the space for Leatherman? And it's just like, well, you have like space for Leatherman everywhere. So now we want our
Formerly
space
not.
for rubber men. Yeah, but that was like, I mean, we had to put a line on, like, this is a rubber man or a rubber people event or space. And yeah, we like Leatherman, and now that it's kind of a blur thing, there is not full like hundreds of Leathermen there and hundreds of women, but there was a moment that we had to be serious about this issue rather than with the women thing.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. John.
Just the only thing I'll say is often I think changing just your name or maybe policies isn't always enough if you want your membership to look different. You have to actively do the work to let those communities know that it's a safe space, whether it's going to BIPOC events, going to women's events, going to trans events. Like, I don't think it's important. I think it's important to change the name, but I also think if you want your organization to look different, it's up to you, especially coming from a cis space, to extend that olive branch and say, you know, we've changed, let's support each other as clubs. And it might not make your organization look different, but if you want it to, you have to put in the work.
Yeah, that in a way indeed is a good point. If you wish, the chicken and egg, where do you start? And that's why I was so curious about what are the conditions around in the case in which changes happen, what came first, because for sure, yeah, only changing a name might even be worse if you know, eventually nothing happens. Roger?
Yeah, I do wonder why you would want your community to change, because you started with saying that your community already included women, and so what made you want to change the audience in your community to begin with?
What we're saying is those people, those women and trans non-binary people were coming to our events and saying they were coming because they were friends with us, but didn't feel like they belonged in the club. So what changed is we want them to feel like they are welcome and involved. And so, yeah, that was the big part of us changing our name. And then I think it was important for us to let, you know, to also preach that. So to go to spaces that maybe weren't gay only, or to have a variety of our events. The way that we operate our club is that not every event will be for everyone, but on our calendar year, there should be one event for you. And so I think it was just for us diversifying our programming so that people did feel involved. And we wanted to change because there were people coming who didn't feel it was for them.
And were these people, were they female presenting or male presenting, or is it a blur?
It was a mix. Yeah,
it was a mix. Okay. It's interesting to see the difference there. As in our club, you see that we only have people who are on the spectrum from non-binary to men or male presenting. This includes cis, trans, and intersex individuals, but we've had some women at our events. Some events are in open bars, so sometimes it's really a cool mix. But our target group doesn't suddenly change into including people who are female presenting or are on the female spectrum. So this is interesting to see that you already had a mixed group, so it would make sense to change your identifiers. But as we don't, do you feel that we should also include people on that end of the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say one, it wasn't like we had a large mixed population. Like our events prior were predominantly cis men, and it took like literally there was like 2 or 3 people saying this that made us, you know, want to change. I also, another point is I don't think communities are monolithic, and what works for one community might not work for the other. You take Melbourne, for example, they have a very large straight rubber population. We don't, I mean, there probably is in Chicago, but I don't know where it is. And so that wasn't really a concern for us. And so I think you really have to kind of listen. What does your community want? What does your community need? And who's at that table, right? If your table is only cis gay men, then you're probably making those decisions based on who's at that table. And so I think every community has to make the decisions that are right for them. And I don't think that's going to look the same for everyone.
And would it be a problem if the board would be only gay men? What would be the problem in that? If apparently we talk to a lot of people, nobody feels that they are left out or excluded in some way.
I'm only saying I think it's important to look at your biases, to look at who's at the table. And if your board is only maybe cis men or white men, why? And, is that a problem? Is it not? I think it's just important to have those conversations. Obviously, every country has like different percentage of people who are people of color or people who are involved or people who want to actually engage in leadership roles. But like it's important to understand what your barriers are and how you can reduce those barriers for people who might want to get involved. I don't know, that's just my opinion. I don't want to talk too much, but
I think this is the interesting conversation to have. So
yeah,
it's really cool. And you have a totally different culture and different cultural dynamics, socio-dynamics. So that there is really interesting. And we are not at that point that we say we should change our identifiers because our affinity or target group is not including people on the female end of the spectrum. So we don't feel we need to do that, and we are still very much inclusive to anyone who is trans or non-binary, as long as they feel comfortable with people that are mainly male presenting, and then everybody's fine with us. And we've had this discussion many a times, and we've also had discussion on inclusion on other topics. But we have not really seen the need to change the identifiers as you and the clubs in Spain have. So it's really interesting for me to see where that came from and what it gained for you.
Yeah, I guess, and there is kind of a important comment that I'm seeing in the chat of like, there are people who attend who might not feel welcome and then don't say anything and don't come back. And a name can mean the world to people. Like changing a name to be more inclusive can make them feel like that space is welcome for them, and they might never have attended otherwise. So I think it's hard to say like we're inclusive, we're just not changing our name, right? When our name is automatically saying you're not welcome.
But that works both ways, right? Because if I am looking for a community of male Kingsters, and it just says Rubber Club, I would not be sure if that would be something for me, right? So then that specific house in the street instead of the street barbecue, that's what at stake here. And how would you advertise that this is something of an event where you could interact with other gay men if you don't advertise that at all? So that has two sides of the same coin, right?
I think it's based on your programming. I mean, we have different events all throughout the year. Some are in gay focused fetish spaces and we advertise that. Some are in pansexual dungeons, we advertise that. We have fetish cabarets, we advertise that. So I think you can have a community that's inclusive that also has a variety of events that are geared towards a variety of affinities. I think there is a way to juggle all of it.
I think ultimately, sorry, I've got to butt in, guys. I think ultimately,
no, go ahead.
What so much of it comes down to is the fact, because you both said this, particularly you, Roger, about the fact is, and I can see going on in the chat as well, about people feeling welcome at an event. And personally, I don't think it comes down to be as crude as I probably ought not to be. It doesn't come down to what's between your legs that should determine whether you feel welcome and included. This is the job of the hosts or hostesses or whatever you want to call them. If you're running an event and you're encouraging people to come along under that nomenclature of fun and friendship, which everyone does. Oh, it's not about the gear, it's about the social. And how often do you go to a social and suddenly, no, it's not even about the social. Ultimately, it comes down to the organizers' events to make sure that every single person that comes in, no matter how old, young, fat, thin, black, white, whatever they've got going on down there, is everybody is welcome, because otherwise there's no point in doing it. It just turns into like speed dating for the good looking people. And that's not surely what our social events are about. Now, as you say rightly, Joe, there are other events that are a little bit more hardcore. There are certain things that I'd hate to say to anyone, oh no, actually that's you won't want to come into this. And I'm not going to plug our weekend in Birmingham again, but fuck it, I'm going to. We've got an event on the Saturday night, our late night event, by one of our well-known organisers in the UK called Susie Kruger, and she's organising a hard-on event. One of the things I wanted to be very clear about it, because I know in London it's gender inclusive. Very few women go to it in London, but I wanted to be sure that in Birmingham, when she was doing it for us in part, that it would be gender inclusive. And as she said, yes, it is. And so absolutely ticked every box for me that there was no part of that weekend or that experience that anyone would feel excluded from. And it's ultimately down to us as the board to make sure everyone is welcome and everybody's enjoying themselves, having fun, making friends, just having a good time. Because surely that's what we get out of bed in the morning to do, isn't it? Isn't it? Not to decide who can or can't or whatever. That's not a decision for us, is it?
I feel you're absolutely right, and generally that is just exactly right. The issue here is that if you want that small house at the end of the street where you want to meet other men that understand how you are and where you want to be amongst these other men and feel safe, how do we make sure that actually happens? Because I see things in the chat like, how is it frightening to be with women? It is really frightening if you're a gay young man and there's a lot of people in the group that are not gay men. It's frightening. It just is. And I think it is fair to just have people say that.
True. And do think that it's good to have your niche groups and to have your different groups. And it's basically what the board wants with this group. And that's important to think about and to learn from. What do I want to learn from other groups? What do I want to do with my group? Joe?
Yeah, I would just say, I want to push back on the idea that it's frightening, and rather that it is opening yourself up to possibilities you might not know you're interested in. I know a particular woman who doesn't live in Chicago anymore, but she was involved in the Chicago Rubber Club. She was a fister, and gay men, little twinks, would line up down the block to fist with her because she was an exceptional dom that knew what she was doing, and they still are gay men. There are people who maybe are interested in trans men or trans women that didn't know until they experienced different person and different energy and different, and so I just think by having a mixed event, you might experience and be exposed to something you didn't know you were interested in. Flogging, right? There's so many kinks that you can do, and it's not about what's in your pants, as we've talked about a million times here. So I think that just having a more inclusive space just opens everyone up to a wider variety of experiences, people, etc.
Absolutely, Joe. Sorry, I've got to chip in. I was at a social a few weeks ago, one of our sister groups in Stoke-on-Trent, which is a dreadful place. But two dominatrix women turned up to this event. And of course, they were allowed in because it was gender fluid and all the rest of it. And I tell you what, the highlight of the evening was watching the guys almost queuing up to lick a heel, a 6-inch heel. And I'm not kind of stereotyping women as being just that within the kink community. I'm not saying that at all. But the whole energy changed. And probably for some, it was a bit scary, to be fair, Roger. But I think it was nothing that they ought not to get used to, because if it's not happening right now, 5-10 years down the line, I can see that it might well do that. And I think that as the leather community has suddenly had this great uplift, particularly in countries like the UK, from looking like it was dead, I think we need to think about how we include people, when we include people, and do our damnedest best to make sure that everybody is included where we can. Because otherwise we will become a subculture of a subculture. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think for now we're in that transition period. I'm just saying, so.
But that is super cool that you would say is a subculture of a subculture, because that is exactly what it is.
Well, I think
That is exactly what we were trying to do, because
I think
we were not mingling with other groups, and that's why we organize things together. We organize things together with the local Bluff community. We organize things with Belgian Rubbermen and other things. So you reach out to these other communities, you make things, and our socials. Just to be clear, our socials are super inclusive. Everybody's welcome, no matter no gear, whatever is in your pens. We don't care, right? So just to make that clear. But the target group is still that target group.
Well, sorry, I know Hermes is trying to get in there. Now, one of the clubs in the UK, Manchester Leathermen, very big club, very popular. They also run Bluff Manchester events as well. Now, Bluff, if you're not familiar with it, the Breeches and Leather Uniform fan club, it's very male orientated. It is very, very exactingly male, and I've and that is almost become a subculture of Manchester Leathermen, who've become more flexible, and their venue, the Eagle, has become a lot more flexible in allowing women into the space as well. So I would love to see the leather community as an individual community become so big and so popular that subcultures do develop within it, because I think that's healthy for us, and it allows that bit of escape away from the more normalized kind of socials we might do. Sorry, Hermes, I know you're waiting patiently. Oh, and Daddy Bear Mike is as well. Sorry, that was just wanted to respond.
Yeah, just to make sure. So looking at the time, I would like to just touch with Mirko and Andre before we can stop recording, and then everybody can feel welcome to open the mic or share. Is that okay, Daddy Bear Mike, if I hold you for 7 minutes? Thanks.
Thank you.
Mirko, and then Andre, and then we open up.
Yeah, well, sometimes we hear that the main problem is that, for example, there are no women in latex in one area. For example, I don't know, in Italy, there's only one, two producers of latex. So, of course, it's very rare to see people in general in rubber, not only women. But I think we don't give the opportunity to learn what the rubber is to everyone. We are at the same point every time, and I think it's important to make a difference visible, like we do with the other subculture. For example, we do many times parties only for bears, or in Italy, for example, there's a party for twinks. There's party, I mean, for everyone, for every sort of subcultures. I mean, there's parties also for women, okay, or for lesbians. So, I mean, why is the problem only party for gay men and so on? But the problem is that it's not enough. So I think the solution is to guarantee spaces only for one subculture, one category, and spaces for everyone who wants to explore. And I think it's more important to understand who are the real dangers of our community, like people who doesn't know what is respect or consent, or people who wanted to go to a place just to see freak people wearing leather or wearing rubber. And it happens in some clubs that I went to, and it's really annoying. So I think it's important to understand which are the real people who can be a risk, a danger for us, and they exist, and sometimes they have the criteria that we select at the beginning. So I think we have to keep in mind that because sometimes, for example, I went to places that I suppose they were only for men, like I went to a chill in Brussels, and you know, the campsex usually is a sort of party only for men. Most of the parties are for men, but I went in a party where there were also two girls, and it was really interesting because when you suppose that they are like too much for the group, for the affinity of the group or something like that, but there were one of them who wanted to play also. One other was only talking with the guests, and she was with the clothes and so on. So I mean, I think we have to remember that with our body, with our body, we can do many things and not just have sex or wear fetish. So I think create inclusive spaces are this. Remember that with our body we can do many things.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mirko. Andrei, you've been listening attentively to a lot of things, so you're thinking a lot, and so you mentioned earlier about when you were organizing the Mr. Leather election some years ago, things changing, and currently, you know, the Mr. Leather Netherlands. Somebody told me it's an event in a bar. Yeah, I was there hosting it. So it's a more social event than the big play area of the play event on Saturday nights. What is your perspective on how your thoughts on how maybe the local community what we can develop or
I think for example, I went to a party last Saturday. That's a very big event here, and it's all mixed, and it's very fetish, and there is a lot of going on, and there are all genders are there, everything is there, and it works perfectly. And so I think there will be always parties or spaces for one community. But I think, for example, if you have a club where you have several parties, I think you should do what my opinion is. You can have the specific parties for just one gender or one kink or one whatever, but next to that, organize parties that are mixed, so that it can infuse together and see what happens. It is what Joe says. If you have mixed parties, you will discover you can discover other things within yourself that you might like. Let me say a personal example. I am focused on male persons. And I especially say male person because I have never experienced yet what my feeling is if I meet a transgender male. What happens with me? And if somebody like that is not allowed in kind of club, I will never know. I will never meet them. So I think it is important to open our minds for that kind of people. And it's always your choice of their choice or anybody's choice with who you communicate with, who you have even sex with. It's your choice. But for me, it's very important and it's very interesting to have the interaction with everybody. It makes it richer and interesting. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. And before I forget, also wanted to pitch what I saw last or 2 weekends ago was the French Rubberman weekend in Paris. And one small thing, we were talking about communication earlier. I noticed in the program and calendar of events, which was really packed with many events, every event had a small icon indicating for which the target for that event. Was it a men only? The play event was open. So just sometimes with these small things for events that anyway, it's a social at the bar.
A bit like a restaurant menu, then, Alberto, with vegetarian being a little icon next to certain
Yeah, I think
vegetables.
sometimes many of events might already be open.
I was playing with the
by-
word vegetarian. Sorry.
But by making it explicit, it's one of the things that one can do to communicate something, because somebody that finds that important, we see, oh, somebody thought about this. So in closing, and well, if it's first time with Kinky Talks, then I can assure you we never stick to the time, because we always have so much to talk about. So today will be the same. But before we close the recording, is there anything from the panels that
Can I just say, Paul?
No, wait. Now I'll mute you for a second. Let me finish, John. Is there anything from the panelists that you were not able to share yet, that you want to have it recorded for posterity before we close the recording and we open for questions?
Daddy Bear Mike has had his hand up for about 10 minutes, bless him. But it's hot. It's hidden.
Yeah, but he's not in the panel yet.
Oh, all right.
So shut up.
Kinky Talks, my ass.
It's all about your ass.
It's always about my ass, darling.
No hands raised. Well, then I'll.
I like to in our discussion. I like to make a difference between play parties and affinity focused parties and social events. They're all different, and I think sometimes you have to have the guts to be specific in focused groups. But on the other hand, it's also a thing that inclusion may be an infusion for your own group, for your own culture within your own group. And I like to give that thought to the discussion as well. And I did see somewhere where people said it was a lot about fear. I don't think it's always about fear that people stick together for their focus groups. It was said, well, fears aren't always rational. Fears are never rational, but sometimes they are there. And especially for beginners, they can be really important to take into account. That's a little thing I wanted to add for the discussion.
Well, then thanks a lot we'll continue with the discussion in a second. Just for the recording, thanks a lot to everyone, also all the things in the chat.
The brothers gonna work.